Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield here holding it down in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We are brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order with promo code GOJO15. Got a great show for you. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us that 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on DraftKingsNetwork.com, DraftKings YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, and more. Great show for you guys. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review. Jordyn Brooks, Seahawks linebacker, going to join us, talk a little bit about their season right now, coming off a couple of tough losses, but trying to bounce back with some words from one of their team leaders. And Cardell Jones, former Ohio State quarterback. I am fascinated, Dad, to talk to at this particular juncture because as we get ready for another round of the college football playoffs rankings, this is one of the very few times I get to use this word, the penultimate round of college football playoff committee rankings. We get this rankings, and then we get the ones on Sunday after conference championship weekend. But as we've got the penultimate round here, and we'll talk today about the Florida State problem the committee's about to have, where an undefeated team is walking into conference championship weekend with not their starting quarterback. And somebody who knows a little bit about the last time that happened would be Cardell Jones, who was the third string quarterback to start the year at Ohio State and ended up going in the last game of the season, the Big Ten championship, and then helping them win a national championship in the first year of the college football playoff. So we'll get to plenty of that with him. We'll talk to Jordyn a little bit. My dad is also warring with Christmas movies at this point, specifically Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Well, it's that time of year again where you start to have these things pop up on TV a little bit more. My dad's noticing the horrifying trends that exist in movies like this.
I've been doing this for a while now. I feel it's my duty, my public duty, to kind of go over this. And the game was so riveting last night with Minnesota and Chicago, we'll get to, that I was using the clicker to go back and forth watching Rudolph and the game because I knew there would be nothing going on in the game, and there wasn't. It was 3-3 at halftime, so you can understand how I was flipping channels. Rudolph,
3 points off of 4 turnovers. 3 points off 4 turnovers. We'll get to some remnants of this game at some point.
We'll get to
that
game.
Hurt.
But what was worse, that game or just when you really sit and watch Rudolph, who I love Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. What a dude, right? But that show, I mean, oh my God, his father, Santa, his girlfriend's dad, the coach. I mean, could they be more excluding, I'm not even saying the word right.
You're so full of rage, you can't even.
I am. I'm so full of rage.
It's discriminatory. They're discriminating against this red nose. It's terrible.
Because of his physical appearance.
Dad's trying to cover it up. It pops off. He had his friend Fireball, who could have been the friend there and really kind of said, hey, don't worry about it. You're still cool. But he jumped. They acted like sheep more than like reindeer. Reindeer just jumping on Rudolph. They excluded him out of the reindeer games after that. And so he's off to, the land of misfit toys where everybody's accepted. It's a beautiful thing. And then the audacity of the fat man Santa, after basically ripping Rudolph and saying he's never going to be part of his crew, that all of a sudden it's foggy one night and needs Rudolph's nose and goes back and said, will you guide my sleigh? I'd have told the fat man to kiss off. I'd have used different language than that to say, are you serious? Are you serious after the way you treated me? You want me to guide your sleigh now? You're coming back to me? How about I guide your sleigh if you're not on it? Let the dentist elf, go on there and give away toys instead of you. It just aggravates me. And then, oh, by the way, at the end when they're doing the credits, when they get all the toys from Misfit Island, and they're dropping the toys off to kids, they're throwing the toys out of the sleighs with parachutes, and they're throwing some of the toys out with no parachutes. Where the hell are these toys landing? I mean, what are we doing here? So, yeah, I watched it maybe a little too intensely and realized just how bad the adults treated the kids in this movie. It was amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. So every year it kind of aggravates me. God love Clarice, Rudolph's girlfriend. She was fantastic right out of the gate. Very, very Real accepting. One. So, I mean, there was, so maybe, I guess that's the message. You're not accepted and you are accepted, but whatever. I mean, man, talk about going back. The message is
you're not accepted for who you are. You're accepted for what other people need from you. And boy, oh boy, is that actually the most apt message for 2023 I've ever heard in a movie.
It really is. I mean, you just watch it and you're like, how are you treating this little reindeer like this? I mean, my God. Yeah, it just aggravates me year in and year out. Almost so much it has me flustered now. That's what at times I forgot the game was going on. I was getting more and more aggravated watching another person kind of dismiss Rudolph because he had the red nose. So
I'm definitely not.
That was a tough watch.
I'm not letting my kids watch that. No.
No, it's a horrible thing. So I had to go back to something even worse, and that was Monday Night Football.
Yeah, my dad's rage texting us about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in our family group chat last night while this game's going on. And honestly, all of that is the mentally healthiest thing you could have done for yourself in the midst of last night's game. They did kill that flightless bird at the end of that movie, by the way. Stay woke.
Yeah, they did.
They looked right at it. They knew it was a flightless bird, and they threw it out of the sleigh. That is no parachute. I forget what varying degree of murder, attempted murder, manslaughter. Yep. I think it's murder because there seemed to be intent. Like there was eye contact. It's the flightless bird.
The premeditation.
Oh, we're not going to give it the umbrella.
Yeah.
Premeditation.
Here, fly or die.
There's premeditation there, and so.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, you're going to learn to fly on the way down, or buddy, we're going to hear splat in about 4 seconds. And I was listening for the splat. So stay woke on that one. Alert your congressman that movie has some crimes in it that we need to discuss. Like the crimes we mentioned. 3 points off 4 turnovers in that game last night. Like, I have a great deal of respect for everybody that suits it up, plays and coaches in the NFL. It is a difficult profession. It is the goal and aspiration for so many people that start lacing it up playing football. But, man, that game hurt to watch. And I was really excited to start this game, Dad, because we're talking about so much of this season with the Bears through the lens of what becomes of Justin Fields in Chicago. You mentioned yesterday you think it's more likely that we get none of the battery back from Chicago, but between Matt Eberflus, Ryan Poles, the GM, and Justin Fields, the quarterback, you think it's more likely that they're all gone than none of them are gone. I do think it still starts with Justin Fields and the questions and decisions you're going to see there. And so I'm like, all right, man, what a great point. We talked about going into the game yesterday. You get this defense and Brian Flores that blitzes more and with more variety than any team in the league. And so what a great test for a quarterback, how you're going to respond to those situations. What are you going to do versus pressure? What kind of answers are going to be there? And the Jekyll and Hyde from the first half to the second half, where in the first half and in the first few drives, Justin Fields is buying time with his legs. He's getting loose and then keeping his eyes downfield. He made some big plays. The throw to Cole Kmet off the delayed tight end release. All this stuff was great. And then in the second half, apparently Luke Getsy in this offense just described it. We're going to build the entire plane out of wide receiver screens. Justin Fields had a career high in passes completed at or behind the line of scrimmage at 10 by the end of the first half and averaged 0.3 air yards on those completions. Dad, for Chicago fans, it was maddening. For anybody not watching Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, it was maddening. And the end result of this, Justin Fields, yes, made enough plays at the end of this game to put them in a position to win it in a game where the Vikings turned the ball over 4 times. But I did not walk out of this game feeling better about Justin Fields' chances of being the Bears quarterback next season.
No, and what we don't know is what we see at practice, right? Now, because they throw so many sideways passes, it's like, do you not trust this guy throwing the ball downfield? Do you get that lack of trust by what you see in practice? Do you not feel he has the ability to stand and read and get the ball downfield? That's what I don't know, because you keep seeing this and you keep saying, why are you calling all of these plays to go sideways instead of vertical? So you do wonder, is there a confidence problem that they have with him? That's something we don't know. We're not at practice. We don't see what can go on there. But at times, and I've said this because I've called Bears games, from last year to this year, in kind of like I talked about with Matt Canada and Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh, I just don't feel like that's such a great relationship with Luke Getsy and Justin Fields. Again, I'm not there. It's all just what I see when I watch film, when I call the games, when I see the play calls, about giving your quarterback the best chance. Rarely do you see Justin Fields stand in the pocket and deliver the ball. He normally is running, creating something on his own, or it's a sideways pass. And we always talk about, even though quarterbacks that can move, you still have to be able to throw from the pocket. And we don't see that a lot. You see it occasionally, and he throws a great ball down the field, hits DJ Moore at the end of the game. Now, again, Minnesota's playing a little soft. It's one of the times they don't blitz, and get pressure on Justin Fields. You're kind of going,
what was going on there? The whole rest of the game.
Yeah, you're doing.
I mean, I think they blitzed literally more than half the time in the game, and now all of a sudden you want to back off and let them have all the room in the world. What are we doing? DJ
Moore's just standing alone in the middle of the field on the game-winning drive. So, Mike, I don't know where it is with Justin Fields, Luke Getsy, the play calling, the confidence, because there's still part of me that wants to see more of what Justin Fields can do. I know there's plenty of people who said, I've seen enough out of what we can do, but man, I just wonder the situation that he's in, and I'll continue to say I don't know what happens in practice. Maybe they don't have a lot of faith in the downfield stuff, but I mean, it's 3rd and 2. 3rd and 2, and you throw a sideways pass and don't make it. I mean, 2 yards. You can't get a 2-yard route down the field. Someone go 3 yards and turn around. Okay? I mean, it shouldn't be as difficult as at times they seem to make it by just saying, we're going to just throw it sideways and we're going to trust our guys to catch the ball and get yards after the catch. Okay? And I get it occasionally, but as you said, a high for him, 10 in the first half completions sideways or behind the line of scrimmage, it's crazy.
I think it's one of those things where, is that a play that can be a response to all-out pressure? Sure, when you've got a player like DJ Moore, who is as adept with the ball in his hands after the catch as any receiver in the NFL, sure. But with the NFL, you can't be one thing all the time, especially offensively. And how often do we see, Dad, in a game where we came up with this conversation with James Franklin in Penn State, where he got mad at a reporter for asking him, hey, why don't you do more of that huck it, chuck it down the field so people don't just get to tee off on everything underneath? And he acted like that was the most offensive concept in the world, when in actuality, that's kind of the point. At some point, you've got to threaten down the field, so defenses are going to have some belief that you're even capable of it. And when you don't, what happens is you get tackled around the line of scrimmage on 3rd and 2, throwing a pass out to your wide receiver on the sideline there. So it was a bit maddening. I understand the thought process, Dad. Justin Fields is a tantalizing talent still. You see the flashes. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But as we're teetering on the edge of maybe your 3rd coach for Justin Fields in his time as a player, I recognize, one, it's not all his fault. Like, very few quarterbacks are going to be able to survive multiple coaching staffs, multiple offensive coordinator voices in their ear, and come out on the other side developed at a level that's going to help them keep that original job. And so I acknowledge that. And two, it's the value proposition on the other side. Because you have the Panthers pick that is the 1st overall pick in the draft right now, and because we've got 2 quarterbacks that are getting that generational label in Drake May and Caleb Williams, you've got a different set of really values that you've got to operate with here because of what you might potentially miss. And the thought of potentially another staff coming in and it being another round of, well, we'll see if this staff knows how to use Justin Fields the right way, I just don't think is feasible for any of the decision makers. And it's less an indictment on Justin Fields and what I think about him and more about, hey, the lack of development because of a number of factors and the fact that you've got these two great quarterbacks waiting in the wings that can reset the clock for everybody inside that building, that give, if you are going to go with new people, a chance for them to come in with a guy that they're more invested in. We know how all this stuff works. So this is kind of about the system and an understanding of usually what goes down here.
100% correct, because the system is the potential of what the next two quarterbacks out of college bring to what we've seen already. The potential of the unknown and the grade and the rating of, we can't pass this guy up. They could be the next great quarterback, and we've seen maybe enough of Justin Fields, even though it's been with different coordinators in a couple of different systems. So we're going to move on from this. But man, I just don't understand a lot of you mentioned Minnesota blitzing. You know what you do when you blitz? When you blitz, there's holes where the team blitz from, right? And never did I see them attacking those holes on the blitz downfield. It was always, as we talked about, the sideways pass. I just think there's again a misconnect there, and or maybe because they don't have the confidence in Justin Fields. You know, quickly on the other side with Minnesota. By the way, Minnesota is still in the playoffs as of today.
They're all four NFC North teams are still mathematically capable of winning the NFC North at this point.
Yeah. But Minnesota is in the 7 right now if the old season were to end today thing. And, you know, the Josh Dobbs story, is it going to end now? I have no idea. 4 interceptions. 3 were his fault. 1 went off Addison's hands. That's not his fault. 3 were his fault. So just like Fields lost 2 fumbles that were on him, Dobbs threw, 3 interceptions that were absolutely on him. They come down. They have a nice drive with about a little over 5 minutes to go. He throws a nice touchdown pass to T.J. Hockenson. They take the lead. And then after that, it's one of Fields' fumbles. When the Bears are trying to get back in this game down 10-9, it's one of his fumbles. So here's the drive for Minnesota after that fumble. Now, burn clock, right? Now you can hold on to the ball, and you can end this game. You know, Chicago just gave you the ball back, and you have the lead. You go no gain, 1 yard, -1 yard. Those are your 3 plays. And then you get a 26-yard punt, I think it was. So everything worked against you there. You couldn't hold on to the ball at all. And then all of a sudden, we get no pressure in that defense, and Fields is zipping it down the field. Hits the big one to DJ Moore to put him in field goal range 10 seconds ago. They win on field goals. And by the way, the last 28 teams that didn't score a touchdown all lost. They were 0-28. And now the Bears are one of the first ones to do it without a touchdown. The last time they did it, they won a game without a touchdown, was 1993. Their first drive of the game, Mike, was 14 plays, 47 yards. It took up 9 minutes off the clock, and they missed a field goal. They got nothing out of it. I mean, this game was just such dreck early on.
It was bad ball, like you mentioned there. It was bad ball, and I understand. We mentioned Justin Fields did enough to get them in position to win at the end of it, but the 2 fumbles that you talked about coming off turnovers were also spots where he gave that team an opportunity to lose it. You were just going up against an unstoppable turnover force. The Minnesota Vikings now 31st in the NFL in turnovers per game, averaging 2 a game, and 30th in turnover margin per game right now. So that's a team that's kind of drifting a little bit with that, and we talk about this all the time. Turnover luck usually evens out, but this is the second time we've talked about this for Minnesota. Early in the season, their fumble luck was insanely bad when you still had Kirk Cousins in the lineup, and now you get to this point where Kevin O'Connell, their head coach, after the game, is starting to do the thing as they head into the bye where he hems and haws a bit on the quarterback position.
We're going to take a look, really evaluate, the inventory of plays now we have of Josh. We got healthy. We got Jordyn back, available to us, and then Nick Mullins is available as well. Look, I think what Josh Dobbs has really done coming in here on short notice and really, going, 2-2 in a stretch where, a lot of people might have thought Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson being out, the deck stacked against us. That's not the way this team thinks. That's not the way we operate. That's not the way I operate. We're trying to go out and win every football game we play.
I will say, Dad, for all the talk that we could potentially have about Josh Dobbs getting sat down for any of those guys he mentioned, which, man, it had to make you sad as a Minnesota Vikings fan to hear that. But he went 2-2 in that process, to me, is my big takeaway, right? We talk about backup quarterbacks all the time. You're there to keep the team afloat. And while there's nothing coming to save you here, and that's ultimately going to be the thing that even if the Vikings are a fringe playoff team, they're going to damn you, is you're probably not going to win a playoff game with Josh Dobbs or any of those guys at quarterback for this team. You do get Justin Jefferson hopefully back on the other side of this bye here. And Josh Dobbs helped steer the ship for as long as he possibly could.
I would keep Josh Dobbs in there. To think you'd put a rookie in there and Jaron Hall instead of him, I don't see. And Nick Mullins been around, but Josh Dobbs would still be the starter to me. And as I mentioned, they're the 7th team in the playoffs right now. There's 4 6-loss teams. They're one of them. And they play the Raiders next, and then the Bengals without Joe Burrow, and then 2 of their last 3 are against Detroit. So it's there for them, but they got to stop turning the ball over, because you ain't going anywhere if you turn the ball over the way they are.
No, that's a coach of mine always used to say, you can't start winning until you stop losing. And 2 turnovers a game is a lot of losing. So we'll get away from that one and get to some college football. Coming up next, strange scenes that we get to explain for the introductory press conference for one new college coach.
To GoJo and Golic. It is conference championship week, highlighted by Alabama, Georgia. Bulldogs 6-point favorites over the Tide. And before these 2 teams face off on Saturday, we actually already know the next time that they're going to meet next year. So ESPN reporting that Alabama and Georgia are scheduled to meet during the first month of the 2024 season, September 28th in Tuscaloosa. Going to be only the 5th time in the past 20 years that they've played in the regular season. So their showdown on Saturday in Atlanta means 5 of their past 6 meetings have come in either the SEC title game or the College Football Playoff National Championship game. Pretty insane. But before any of these games, you guys, we're going to have the latest College Football Playoff rankings released tonight, Fellas, who are you expecting to see in your top 4?
Boy, I tell you what, first and foremost, Jesse mentioned in a regular season matchup between Bama and Georgia. Dad, you're right. The juice is going to feel really lackluster compared to what we're used to with these teams, where it's either a play-in game for the championship or a rematch of the championship. We've been spoiled rotten with the matchup of, I think, alongside Clemson, right? When you tell the story of the 4-team era of the college football playoff, the decade that we had, this is year 10 of the 4-team CFP. The story of that era is Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia, right? Georgia with a chance to three-peat on the back end of this. Alabama and Clemson, the teams that stared eye to eye for basically the first 6-7 years of this entire process. You mix in Ohio State in there as well, who won the championship in the first year, who appeared in the championship in 2020 when that great Alabama team bulldozed them. But it really has been about these 3 teams. So getting them in the regular season, going to be a little bit different for all of us here. Going to have to weigh that one.
And you know, right at the beginning of the season, too. So we know how that works. Even if you lose, you have a chance to come back, i.e. look at Alabama this year, losing to Texas early on. And if Alabama beats Georgia, they're probably going to be in the Final Four. So the whole landscape changes next year, as we talked about with Ohio State and Michigan playing last week, playing 1 time a year. Next year, they could actually play 3 times a year. So it's going to be very, very different next year. I'm sure a lot of people are going to hate it. It's kind of the feeling out of how it's all going to go down, of what are the meaningful regular season games. But listen, when those 2 teams get together, they're always meaningful because those are 2 big powerhouses.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to that one. We got the rankings, the penultimate round of rankings coming out tonight for the CFP in the meantime. And, Dad, we finally got one of the pseudo-eliminator scenarios from this past weekend. The Ohio State-Michigan game we knew was going to knock one team, at least for the time being, out of the top 4. The rankings from last week, if anyone missed it, Georgia at 1, Ohio State at 2, Michigan at 3, Washington at 4, followed by Florida State at 5, Oregon at 6, and then Texas, Alabama, Missouri, and Louisville after that. So, Dad, Ohio State going to drop down out of the top 4 for the time being. You would imagine the real conversation is going to be, does that win vault Michigan up over a team like Georgia, who moved into the number 1 spot in the last couple of weeks over Ohio State? Or does it go Georgia, Michigan, and then you'd imagine everyone else just bumps up, right? Washington at the 3 spot after their win in the Apple Cup, and then Florida State at 4, who goes on the road and survives at Florida in a rivalry game. And, Dad, the way that they absolutely deserve credit for, but we know Florida State's kind of going to be the focus from here on out because they're a potential undefeated Power 5 champ with a backup quarterback right now. How do you think the committee is going to deal with them?
Oh, I think they'll be 4. They have to be 4. They'll be in the top 4. There's 4 undefeateds. All 4 are going to be in the top 4. But Florida State, I believe, will be number 4 because they're the ones everybody's kind of, will they get knocked out of this by Louisville in the championship game? Though I think, listen, I picked Washington all year to be in the Final Four. I think Oregon's going to win that game. I think Oregon's going to be number 5, and I think Oregon is right on the verge of winning that game and being in the Final Four. Oregon to me right now, I think I could argue them to be the best team in the country, the way they're playing right now. The defense is playing well. The offense certainly is playing well with Bo Nix and what they got going on. So I actually think they're going to beat Washington. I hope it's a great game Friday night. We'll see. But I think the undefeateds will be the 4. Michigan, Georgia, Michigan. So what? Obviously, it'll matter in seedings when you get to the final one of 1 playing 4 and 2 playing 3. But it'll be Washington 3 and Florida State 4. And I still think if they all win and you have 4 undefeateds, that's going to be your 4. While it may not be the 4 best teams, which what the committee is tasked with, I do not think you can keep Florida State out if they win against Louisville and are undefeated. I just don't.
So that's going to be part of the equation here, and everyone is obsessed with ESPN flashed the graphic the other night of the chaos scenario that could potentially happen. And it's not actually unrealistic in this scenario, what they're presenting here. The idea is, and it all centers around what you just mentioned there, Florida State, undefeated Power 5 team, backup quarterback in there. Ohio State, year 1, all the comparisons we made. The scenario is this. Michigan wins the Big Ten, which we all expect them to do overwhelmingly as their 20-point favorites against Iowa. Florida State wins the ACC against a Louisville team that just lost to Kentucky, so very possible even with a backup quarterback in there. Alabama wins the SEC, which we've seen Alabama since that Texas loss in the early portion of the season become a lot better. Oregon wins the Pac-12, which we expect, and Texas wins the Big 12, which we expect against Oklahoma State. So, Dad, Alabama, and that would really be the only upset of conference championship weekend in the scenario presented. Everybody else is favored in their game. So, in that scenario where you would have all of those teams, including one-loss conference champ Bama, one-loss conference champ Oregon, one-loss conference champ Texas, and then one-loss Georgia, one-loss Washington, one-loss Ohio State, who gets in that scenario with these teams presented?
Well, I think that, if it's we always talk about if it's a close game. So in this scenario, you're saying Michigan and Florida State are undefeated, right? So
yes.
To me, they're both in. They're both in. Is the Alabama-Georgia game a close game? And here's what I'm going to say is if Alabama beats Georgia, however it falls out, Alabama will be in, Texas might be in. I would put in Alabama over Texas because Alabama, I know Texas beat them early in the season, but Alabama just beat the committee's number one team in Georgia. Alabama, to me, would be in the Final Four, even if Texas is left out. Because and I would say if Oregon
Texas beat them, you beat the number one team. Texas beat the team to beat the number one team. They beat them.
Beat them early in the season. Listen,
but these teams this isn't like 2017 USC where you change quarterbacks. It's the same team that Texas played.
I know. I'm just telling you what I think they're going to do. I think they're going to put Alabama in because they beat the number one team, and I think Michigan would be in, Florida State would be in, and then would Georgia still be in if it's a close game? If it's not Georgia, Oregon is going to beat a top four team in Washington. To me, there's a chance Texas gets left out of this thing.
I think Oregon, if they win this weekend, is a lock. Like you erase your one loss. Your one loss in the regular season was a loss where you lost kicking a field goal at the end of regulation on the road against a team right now that's going to be a top four team in college football. You'd erase your one loss. I think they're a lock to get in. I think Michigan's obviously a lock. You can put them in pen at this point. I don't know how I could put Alabama in over Texas. Like that to me is the problem. So you would put Georgia in?
So if Georgia lost, you would keep Georgia in and add Texas to the mix?
I'm not saying you would even keep Georgia in. I'm saying the conversation would be around Georgia, Alabama, and Florida State and how to organize that, because I think Oregon would have to be in, and I think that Texas would have to be in. If you're going to have Alabama there, this is one of those where I understand head-to-head only matters so much, and if we see, hey, you get a win early in the season, but then after that your seasons are polar opposite, and one goes one way, and Alabama's these world beaters, and Texas kind of limps through the rest of the year, it'd be one thing, but Texas has handled their business. They've looked like a grown-up football team this year. They survived having Quinn Ewers injured for a couple of games, and so I just don't know how, given that set of circumstances, even with that win at the last weekend of the year, you'd be able to jump Alabama over them with that head-to-head win, and Texas going on the rest of the year and winning the Big 12 and doing everything that they've done. That wouldn't make sense in my brain.
I think it would happen. Michigan, Florida State undefeated would be in. I think Alabama would be in. And then would you put a one-loss Georgia in, depending on the game? But I think Oregon would be in if they beat Washington. So that leaves Texas on the outside looking in. That's what I think would happen.
Oof, it is going to be some interesting answers from Boo Corrigan, the committee chairperson. Speaking of interesting answers, though, I don't know if we got any as it pertained to Frank Reich and his firing yesterday. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. And before we get to Frank Reich and the fanning flames and the smoke coming from the dumpster fire that is the Carolina Panthers team, we were talking college football, and if we're going to talk coaches changes, I feel like we need to address the video that came out of Texas A&M yesterday of Mike Elko, their new head coach, showing up on the tarmac. They didn't do the marching band like they did with Jimbo Fisher last time, which is probably good, but that didn't stop them from doing all the normal yell leader stuff that we always see out of Texas A&M. The visual here that I have to imagine for a non-college football fan is very confusing to see. Do we have that video of Mike Elko? Tell you what, I made my first trip down there this year. That place is different. That place is real different. Like, in a sea of college football tradition, that place is I mean, unsurprisingly, considered the whole Corps of Cadets thing on campus, which is a whole other thing I don't fully understand. It is a militant level of fandom that you saw on display there, and those yell leaders doing their funny little dance.
Yeah, it felt very cultish. I was like, okay.
Yeah. Most colleges are, aren't they? I mean, and luckily he was there to be an assistant coach for a couple of years, so he knew the song. He didn't get the deal Jimbo Fisher got. He got 6 years at $7 million a year, so guaranteed $42 million. But I love this. Their athletic director, Ross Bjork, said, we wanted it to be fair market value, but we also wanted to say, hey, look, I think the landscape can change where you actually have to earn things. If he were to win the national championship, that means you would obviously go through all the playoffs, the 12-team, the quarters, the semis, win the SEC. If he were to win the SEC or along with that, he could make another $10.5 million on top of the $7 million salary if he were to do all that. I mean, $1 million for college football appearance, $1.5 million for quarterfinals or winning the SEC, $2 million for a semifinal appearance, $2.5 million for a title appearance, $3.5 million for winning the thing. And I don't know if they will, but my God. I mean, he can make a ton more. He's already up to $7 million a year. This is a guy who hasn't been a head coach very long, right? Goes to Duke and is the ACC Coach of the Year, has a decent year this year until his quarterback goes down, and now, is right near the top of the food chain. Certainly lower than some of the top guys, but still, you go to Texas A&M where that money is rich. And they got it to give out. And I love he's making $7 million a year, though they say he's going to have to earn some of those incentives as well.
Well, I'm just amazed Jimmy Sexton allowed this to happen because, spoiler alert, if you throw a dart at a college football coach, they're probably represented by Jimmy Sexton, who was Jimbo Fisher's agent, who got him that Wild Boy deal. And he represents Mike Elko here, too. And I'm like, damn, so Elko has to take a $2 million a year haircut just because he didn't win a national championship at Florida State, which probably is the right thing to do and makes logical sense, but it doesn't make college football math is like boy math. It doesn't make full sense. And so walking into this, I just assumed, hey, Texas A&M is kind of in a tough spot where they just went through the whole Mark Stoops fiasco over the weekend. They probably need an easy dub here with their guy. And I guess, real scenario here is Mike Elko is an ascending head coach. This is an opportunity that was a step up in resources and weight class, all the things from Duke, and so it makes sense. But part of me was still stunned Jimmy couldn't squeeze a couple more and at least get him back to what Jimbo was making.
I never should there be a 10-year contract given out again. I mean, if you see a 10-year, that's fool's gold, man. That's just waiting for something to happen. I think the max you get now is going to be 6. I think schools would love to give less, but you have to at least give a recruiting cycle through, which would be 4. But these coaches hold a lot of power now because we've seen longer contracts. So, a lot of them, in Elko's situation, when he's going to be a sought-after guy, he's not going to, him and Sexton, they're not going to 4. Get out of here with 4. We need at least 6. I think that's going to be kind of the number for these coaches is 6 years. I don't think we see 9, 10-year deals anymore. I just think that's a bad move by schools to do.
I think we see whatever Jimmy Sexton wants us to see, because there is one man who actually controls all this in college football, and it's him, who's the best at his job of anybody running this stuff. But so we'll have that going on in College Station that I actually think could go well. I mean, Mike Elko seems like an actual good coach who is in the right spot. Like, getting a coach on the way up as a coach who has already maybe had their best days behind them, usually good business, and doing it with all that trench talent. I'm very excited to see that. But Jesse, we got to check back in. We were on the show yesterday when Frank Reich got the news that he was going to be let go by the Carolina Panthers, and we've had a whole day of fallout, including hearing from the man himself.
Yeah, I mean, wow, a guy who would have loved to have seen 6 years, Frank Reich, out after 11 games in Carolina. Now, only one NFL coach was fired after fewer games than Frank Reich. That would be Pete McCulley, who got fired from the 49ers in 1978 after 9 games. So Frank Reich making history, and not in a cool way. And despite the abrupt end to his tenure in Carolina, Reich told the Charlotte Observer he has no hard feelings towards David Tepper. So he had this whole statement about how he has nothing but positive thoughts about him on a personal level. He saw a great side to him. He actually ended his statement saying, "I have no hard feelings, and my personal relationship with him was actually a real highlight of this short time." Kind of a wild statement, in my opinion. I mean, he was really pumping David Tepper's tires. Now, just to add fuel to this dumpster fire, you guys, the players found out via social media that Frank Reich was out. So, I mean, what's the fallout from this? Senior, you could not stop ranting yesterday about what a terrible move you thought this was.
I mean, I just, and people sit there and say, well, Frank Reich isn't a very good head coach anyway. When he was at Indy, he went 10-6, 7-9, 11-5, 9-8, 3-5-1, and got fired. If you want to say that, okay, then still look at Tepper for making the hire if you don't think he was a good hire. Tepper hires and fires. I mean, there's no way you get better by doing the route that Tepper is doing in Carolina. You don't. It's not going to work if you don't get any consistency at all amongst coaches and amongst players playing, certain, style of play, which now changes yet again. So this one all goes back to Tepper. He's got a quick trigger finger, and he's gonna pull the trigger, and he's gonna make changes, and they're not going to get better for it. As I said, there are plenty of people that don't think Frank Reich was a very good head coach anyway. If you want to think that, that's fine, but that's still on Tepper for hiring him then and making the decision this quick into the tenure of a young quarterback and thinking it's not going to work. This is all on the owner.
Any success that could potentially come in Carolina will be purely accidental. That's what this all tells me. Like, it will be in spite of the man at the helm. David Tepper's owned the Panthers and Charlotte FC for less than 5 years and has fired a combined 5 coaches in that span between the two teams. Like, we've talked about the interim coaches that have been involved in that math too. But at some point, Dad, if every room you walk into stinks, it might have something to do with you. And that's the point we're getting at right now. But between coach and quarterback, the two most important things that you can do if you're David Tepper, you have not managed to go out here and do anything remotely successful at either of those spots, and you keep cycling through it. Anyone else in any role on a team that made this many bad decisions all in successive order would have been fired by David Tepper. Yep. David Tepper would have fired David Tepper right now, and the problem becomes, if you know this is the MO in the building and you're anyone who's got other options, why would you choose this one to go and hang out where Bryce Young, maybe there's some appeal there, but you don't have your first round pick this season. You're walking in hamstrung with that out the gate. There doesn't seem to largely be a lot of appeal here for any of the names that people are going to throw out. And Dad, we didn't get to talk about that yesterday, but Ben Johnson was someone that they talked to last year, the coordinator for the Detroit Lions. I threw out Bobby Slowick, who's the coordinator for CJ Stroud and the Texans, if you're that jealous of how it's gone over there. But I don't know what realistic name who's got options, even with all the money that he can throw at them, is going to want to mess with this.
They always say head coaches, you're hired to be fired. At no place is it more quicker and happen more often, I think, than Carolina. So the next coach, I hope they have Jimmy Sexton as an agent to get him at least a 4 to 5 year deal, so you're guaranteed that money when you're out in 2 years, because Tepper just is going to fire you. That's what he does.
That is so true. This is deeply college football. David Tepper, big-time college football vibes in terms of the churn and burn when results aren't there immediately.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Week 12 is in the books, so let's turn our attention to Thursday night. Week 13 kicks off with the Cowboys hosting the Seahawks. Both of these teams jockeying for position in the NFC playoff picture, as you can see here. Seahawks trying to get back on track. Losers of 3 of their last 4. Doesn't get any easier going up against a Cowboys offense that is firing on all cylinders, averaging 42 points over their last 3 games. One of the players tasked with slowing down this Dallas attack is Seattle linebacker Jordyn Brooks. He caught up with the guys to discuss this team's mindset heading into Week 13.
Jordyn, appreciate the time. Middle of the season to really getting towards the end of the season here. So a lot on the plate for you guys here, but appreciate you joining us today, man. How are you?
I'm blessed, man. Thank you guys for having me.
No, we really appreciate your time. We know you guys got the short week coming up here, and we certainly want to get into the matchup you guys have coming with the Dallas Cowboys. But I want to look back before we go forward. I know it was a tough loss for you guys this weekend, but for you specifically, I saw in the middle of that game, the cameras caught you on the sideline, really trying to fire up the defense, really passionate looking speech there. Can you take us in that huddle? What were you trying to say? What message were you trying to deliver to the guys?
Just trying to get us to wake up a little bit. I felt like defensively, we came out flat, gave them plays that honestly they didn't deserve. And that's how you get beat against a good team. And so, as one of the leaders on the team, you can kind of feel which direction the team is kind of headed. And I felt like we weren't headed in a good space. And so I just wanted to grab the guys and try to rally us and so that we can, play better ball, play our type of ball. Fortunately, we weren't able to get that done this game, but move on to the next.
We're at a point now where it's kind of moving time in November, getting into December to try and make that move. Where is this team lost the last couple of games, but where do you guys feel you are, especially defensively right now?
We're not where we want to be. I feel like we got all the guys we need. When you look across the board, this is one of the most talented rosters in the league right now. I think it's just about everybody buying in, believing that, we lost a couple games in a row, that we can still pull this thing out. And that's the thing right now, is that we can't panic, right? We're still in a good spot. And so it's about guys believing in what we're doing and rallying together and just finishing the course. It's not supposed to be easy.
You mentioned, speaking up, being one of the leaders on this defense. I know a couple of years ago, it didn't feel like that was the case for you here. You're on a defense with Bobby Wagner, who's an all-timer, a future Hall of Famer. When did you start to feel comfortable enough to be the one rallying there and not just deferring to Bobby when it came to stuff like that?
Honestly, I feel leadership is within. Not everybody is a leader. I've always been a leader in everything that I've done. And so just years prior, I was just younger. Didn't have enough skins on the wall for anybody to even care about what I'm talking about, And so as the years progress, you play some ball, you get some skins on the wall. I think guys can take heed to that. I always think a leader has to first lead by production. And so you produce, I think guys will hear you out a little bit more. So that's kind of what it's been for me.
Jordyn, I always like when players can take people who will never get close to the game down on the field a little bit. You were a tackling machine at Texas Tech, doing the same thing in Seattle. But during your time there, I believe the scheme was changed by Clint Hurt, your defensive coordinator. If you can take people down on the field a little bit and we always talk about a quarterback in a new system, but how about on the defensive side, a linebacker with a new system that's put in place?
Yeah. Are you saying what's been different?
Yeah, well, what didn't Clint change it from like a 4-3 to a 3-4, and just how that can be different for a linebacker? It's always quarterback talk. I want to hear about the defensive side of the ball. As a former D lineman, fill people in on that defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, changing the 3-4 to 4-3, and then having your outside linebackers stand up, and sometimes even dropping the coverage, play off the edge, rush them whenever you need to. I think it helps us a lot in the run game. Currently, we're not where we want to be. We've been better than we were in the past as far as last year. And so kind of changing that front, getting different bodies, bigger bodies that fits this scheme, it can eliminate some run leaks that we suffered a lot last year. And so I think that's been the biggest difference as far as this scheme. And then the coverage aspect is just getting a little bit more stickier in coverage. so that we can just rush forward guys and be a lot more stickier from top to bottom.
That's from your guys' perspective. I'm curious in reaction to what offenses do. In your guys' division especially, you see so much of the pre-snap motion from San Francisco, from Los Angeles, the stuff that's been so prevalent around the league. And so many people talk about it, but from a defender standpoint, what is the biggest challenge that presents to you guys in how you go and respond to that?
Yeah, with all the motions, I call it eye candy. Just dangling cheese over your face to distract you from what they really don't want you to see. And they do it a lot, and sometimes they might give it to the guy that's motioning. So you always got to be patient versus those type of teams. And it's hard, like I said, it's not easy, and they're very good at what they do. And so knowing that teams like San Francisco, LA, the Rams, when they do a lot of pre-snap motioning, trying to get you out of your gaps and then run the opposite way, a lot of those things, they take place. And so it's just about us being disciplined as a defense, knowing this is what they want to do. Linebackers get you depth, D-line stay in your gap, and safeties get ready to fill wherever needed.
So normal, in a short week, if it's a division game, it's a little easier because you know the opponent pretty well. When it's not a division game, you have to be force-fed a little more. And you guys are playing Dallas on Thursday. So, and this offense for Dallas has kind of been clicking as of late. What do you see from this Cowboy offense as you're starting to scout them?
I think the first thing that pops out on film is obviously, quarterback. I think he's been playing great. And he's really been the bell cow for that offense. And so, they feature a lot of guys, at the receiver spot. They got a good run back there in a solid O-line. Overall, they have a nice looking offense. And we got to come out prepared and come out ready to play these guys. When you watch the tape, they throw the ball all over the place. Like I said, they like to feature their receiver 88. And so it's about staying on top, high-lowing, tackling well, being where we need to be, and playing sound, disciplined football.
It's certainly going to be a big challenge, like you said there, for all those reasons. So looking forward to that matchup. Big picture for you here as your role has kind of changed on this defense. Like you said, you've got the earned ability to go and command that locker room. How do you approach young guys that were once in your shoes? You got a guy like Devin Witherspoon. You got some young guys in that defensive secondary. How do you view your role with bringing some of those guys along in this defense?
I don't look at it as a role. I just look at it as life. Like, how would I bring anybody along, that's younger than me? And if I have any experience in the same thing that they might be dealing with or struggling through, I will always wrap my arm around them and try to help them. And so for me, for the young guys, I always try to be that, be in their ear and tell them what's right, or tell them what they need, or tell them what they might be doing wrong here, or what they need to keep doing, encouraging them, lifting them up. And so with Spoon, I really haven't had to do that a lot. He's kind of just been he's been making plays all over the place. And so you really don't have to do that a lot with him. And so, but, as far as other young guys, always try to pull them to the side and get them words of wisdom.
Nothing like being the grizzled vet at 26 years old, huh? 4th year of the league, and it's been a great run for you so far. Along those lines of younger people, your coach, Pete Carroll, is 72. How does he relate to the younger generation, which on the team is basically everybody?
Yeah, he fits right in. And this is no joke when I say this. I think he has more energy than me most days when we walk into the building. I mean, you guys seen the clip of him throwing the football. This is something he's been doing every day since I've been here. You'll see him running down on kickoff. I mean, he's just as active as anybody that you'll see, despite him being 72, 73 years old. The guy's just full of energy. And it honestly wears off on everybody in the organization. I think that's one of the cooler things to see in life, somebody that old to the age doesn't affect him at all. See, Dad, there's hope for you still.
Stop it.
Jordyn, we appreciate the time, man. We know it's a short week and you guys got a lot to get to. Thanks so much. Best of luck, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you again soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for having me. Have a blessed day.
Thanks, Jordyn.
You too, Jordyn. Appreciate it. All right, big thanks to Jordyn Brooks for stopping by. We'll talk to Cardell Jones, former Ohio State quarterback, coming up at the end of this hour. He's got a book out right now and is just in general a fascinating man. The author of maybe my favorite college football tweet ever. We didn't come here to play school. So, Dad, I don't know if you have as much of an affinity for that. You remember that tweet, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I remember we talked about that tweet a bunch. I mean, what a story that was, him coming in and leading Ohio State to a national championship. Like we said, we have the Florida State comparison now with the road still possibly clear in front of them if they remain undefeated. But also I'll be interested in what he thinks about Ryan Day losing 3 in a row to Michigan and what that thought process is for former players and alumni.
Yeah, no, I saw Joshua Perry, who was on with us, was pretty strongly against what he had heard from really Kyle McCord and CJ Stroud last year, who both said we're not defined by just one game, and push back on that notion like, dog, no, around here you kind of are defined by that game, and it is an important game, and it's not like all the rest of them. There's a reason we got to clock up year-round talking about that, so I'll be curious for Cardale, who was involved in that rivalry and certainly got to that highest point, got to that national championship, I believe, with Josh on that team, about how he views a lot of the attitude of some of the current players there. But, Dad, we're not here to talk about that just yet.
No.
What we're here to talk about is coming off the NFL weekend, a little something, nothing, or everything. How we interpret some of the results that we saw from this weekend, some of the stuff that we didn't get to yesterday. And I want to start with this, Dad. Something, nothing, or everything. How much meaning are we putting behind the Kansas City Chiefs get right offensive game? The Chiefs score 31 points and match their second highest output of the season in a game where they started off in a 2-touchdown hole against the Antonio Pierce Las Vegas Raiders. So, Dad, I don't know if we fully know what to make of this Raiders team yet, how good they actually are, but at the beginning of this game, it looked like the team that was more talented, especially at the skill spot, than their Kansas City counterpart. You saw the best of Josh Jacobs at running back. You saw the best of Devontae Adams at wide receiver, and you looked and said, oh man, I could see why we were all so disappointed in Josh McDaniels. And then Kansas City kind of flipped the switch. So something, nothing, or everything, Dad, the Kansas City Chiefs offense flexing this past weekend.
Well, I'll give them the everything that they did flex, but I also think there's part of me that looks at the rest of this AFC and it's not what we thought it was going to be. What other team are we worried about in the AFC? Every division leader has 3 losses. I get it. So the number 1 seed in the conference can shift around. But in all honesty, I think there's one team right now, one team that could really kind of challenge Kansas City, and that's Baltimore. Basically because of their defense and how well their defense has played. I know Jacksonville, like I said, has the 3 losses, and Miami as well, but I don't see either one of those defenses being able to really do the job against KC when it gets to crunch time in the playoffs. But Baltimore has an excellent defense and certainly an offense that can put some points on the board and talent on the offense. So while we looked at this deep conference at the beginning of the year, I have it basically down to those 2. I really do. Now, Buffalo looks good every now and then, especially when Josh Allen is running the ball, and we know Miami can put some points on the board. But to me, it's basically Baltimore. So I don't know if I'm saying this about Kansas City because of Kansas City, because I still wonder where you're going with the ball outside of Travis Kelce. It's been Rashee Rice. It's been Watson as well. He has come on somewhat strong, Justin Watson. So, but I think it's more about the rest of the conference, quite honestly. It is just not the power that we all thought it was at the beginning of the year. At least I don't believe so.
I still think it's one of those things, like where they're going outside of Travis Kelce to me doesn't really matter because it's 15 still. Like that was what this game reminded me of is, oh, that's right. As long as you got that dude in an offensive line that can actually keep him upright, you're going to be in pretty good shape. And this year you've got a weaponized defense. Like you've actually got a group of dudes that can hang on the other side. Because if you get down to a matchup like Baltimore, Dad, I would favor Kansas City in that one. Because if you're going to say, hey, both of these teams got really good defenses and I'm counting on one team to have the quarterback make more plays, especially in the postseason, I'm not going to do the Lamar Jackson thing where I think he's a lesser quarterback because they haven't had as deep of a postseason run as we've wanted to, but tie goes to the runner until further notice with Pat when you get into those moments. So I would say they'd be favored in there, and I'd be curious as we start to think about what is the best matchup for the Chiefs in the AFC if you're going to beat them. I don't know if I would believe it's Baltimore right now.
I would favor Kansas City over Baltimore, but I think Baltimore is the team. I think the team that could knock them off in the playoffs and represent. That's the team I think that has the ability, both offensively and defensively, to do it more than any other team in the AFC. But Kansas City's the favorite, without question.
Yeah, I'll say everything in this game. I think seeing the ball go through the basket again for them, we'll see if maybe time will out here that this Raiders team was coasting on some high energy coming off Antonio Pierce taking over that job, and maybe it'll settle. But honestly, I came out of that game, this isn't part of the question or not, but I looked at some of the way the talent performed for that Raiders team. That's going to be an interesting job. Like, obviously, Antonio Pierce is going to have his day in court when it comes to potentially keeping the reins for that job, but there is some appeal there provided you've got options that you can start to work around with the quarterback situation, because it's clearly not going to be Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know if Aiden O'Connell's your long-term answer by any stretch. Right. He's come in and played very well for a rookie picked where he was. But there is some appeal there given the weapons that you've got on that Las Vegas Raiders team. Dad, let's get to the Bills. Speaking of AFC teams, after this loss this weekend, Dad, something, nothing, or everything, the Buffalo Bills on life support walking into the rest of the season.
Oh, I think that's something. Their next two games are Kansas City and Dallas. So, I mean, that's something right there. And then they have the Chargers and they have New England. That should be 2 wins for them. And then they finish with Miami. Miami now has 3 games, 3 losses. Miami's 8-3, and Buffalo has 6 losses. So we have to see what Miami does by the time they get to that last game of the season, because the Bills already beat them once this year. So we'll see. So I do think there is something to that schedule, because KC and Dallas are their next 2 games coming up. That's going to be difficult for them, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think the margin for error is at a place right now that's really concerning. I will definitely say something like, I still can't quit them because they're a really good football team that just went through an awful turnover stretch. This is a mind-blowing stat. We talked about on one side the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had a winning record despite being outgained in the first 9 games of the year. This win this last weekend was actually the first time the Pittsburgh Steelers outgained an opponent in a win this year. Conversely, the Buffalo Bills have a 101 point differential and are 6-6 right now. It is unbelievable. They're the only team since 2000, according to 33rd Team, the only team since 2000 to outscore their opponents by 100 or more points through 12 weeks and not have a winning record. So it doesn't make sense, Dad. We watched this football team play, including this last weekend, and still see a team that absolutely on their best day stares eye to eye with almost anyone in the NFL. And for all we talked about with the turnovers with Josh Allen, I do think it's the defensive attrition that's going to ultimately be their undoing in so many critical situations. The turnover stretch did not help, but I think all the injuries, we talked about it before the season, we've probably seen the best version of this Buffalo Bills roster in this particular window come to pass already. So it was going to be hard this year anyway, because they haven't made that cycle to the next wave the way that Kansas City and Cincinnati have.
So the thing to me is, do you have the ability to make a run in the playoffs? And when we're talking about run, Buffalo's one of the teams we talk about making it to the Super Bowl. So you have to make a consistent run in the playoffs, and I don't trust Buffalo right now to make a consistent run in the playoffs when you're one and done, that they could put game after game after game to the Super Bowl to consistently get it done.
Let me ask you this, because I actually think if you jumble together, so if we look at the back end of the AFC playoff picture right now, you've got the 4 division leaders, and then in the 5, 6, 7 slot, you've got the Pittsburgh Steelers at 5, you've got the Cleveland Browns at 6,
right,
and you've got the Indianapolis Colts currently sitting at the 7 spot right now, followed by the Texans, the Broncos, and the Bills. Dad, of every team I mentioned, from the Steelers on down, if you said, who in that group do you trust most to win a postseason game? I would probably at this point give the nod to the Houston Texans, but Buffalo's right there. And realistically, given what we've seen from them in the past, I would trust Buffalo to win a postseason game over every non-Texans team that we just mentioned there.
I would trust Buffalo probably even over the Texans to win a game.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for Buffalo, it's Super Bowl, and they need to win more than a game in the playoffs, and that's where I see them. I just don't see them consistent enough to put a string of wins together in the postseason.
I guess I'm just saying, like, their charge right now is, and their problem is, we don't know if they're going to get to the postseason.
Exactly.
That's the difficult part
right.
for them is this is a team that could realistically miss the playoffs right now, even though I think they're better than pretty much every team that we just mentioned in that grouping. And that's the maddening part is football-wise, quality-wise, they're absolutely there. But whether it's, whether you're a Bills fan who believes it's bad coaching decisions by Sean McDermott at certain junctures, whether it's just the poorly timed turnover luck that sunk your season in a competitive division, either way, we've got this weird situation where I believe this is actually a team capable of winning multiple playoff games, especially with the talent on offense there, that might not even get the chance at this point. Speaking of a team with playoff hopes, Dad, the Lions lose to the Packers. Turnovers on offense here. The Lions sputtering in this loss, Dad. Something, nothing, or everything as we look to their potential playoff and Super Bowl hopes.
There has to be something to it, right? I mean, the expectation was high this year coming off of last year where I called their game against the Packers when, the game before that determined a lot of the outcome of what was going to go on in that last game. So Detroit was right there, right? So we all had the high hopes this year, and now they have a big lead in the North. And after that game against Green Bay on Thanksgiving, I think we were all a little bit like, okay, they have a big lead. They should be able to hang on to it. But the expectation was a little bit more. We were talking about the depth of the NFC. We're talking about Philly, San Francisco, and Dallas, and it usually stopped there. And then we would put Detroit up there in that top four, and then they lay an egg like they did, which is something, unfortunately, they've been used to doing on Thanksgiving, though we didn't expect it this year. So, yeah, there's concern there. I think they still make the playoffs, but there's concern with how they're playing when they get there and that expectation.
And you know what? This is probably a good time to remind people, and we talked about this some earlier in the season, of what the expectations are for the Lions this year. This is a team that has been a laughingstock for a long time and then became this plucky underdog who would lose a bunch of close games. And then last year was on the verge of making the playoffs, ultimately lost out, but was able to throw a missile into the side of one of their rivals in the Packers and keep them out of the postseason in Aaron Rodgers' final year there. And now, Dad, if they go on to win the division, if they go on to make the postseason, that is going to be a successful year for the Detroit Lions.
Yes.
So what I'm about to say next comes with that caveat, which is, as we've tried to justify their place amongst the top end of the NFL this year, we do the power rankings, the college football playoff committee style rankings for the NFL playoffs on Thursdays. They aren't built like the top teams in the NFC right now. When you look at Philadelphia, when you look at San Francisco, I even think when you look at the Dallas Cowboys right now, I think that there's still something missing for the Detroit Lions. And we're going to talk. I heard Dominique Foxworth on his show the other day railing about the defense on that team. I looked at Jared Goff and I said, we saw the ceiling show up again. Jared Goff has been a good quarterback. We talked about him having a little bit of edge to him, absorbing some of the Dan Campbell. But when it comes to Jared Goff, the player, what we've seen is when the system breaks down, Jared Goff is not going to go beyond that. And you saw that show up in some of the negative plays in this game. And I think going forward, that was a reminder of, all right, there's only so much I'm going to expect from Jared Goff in certain situations. And for Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts, for Dallas with Dak Prescott, even for Brock Purdy in San Francisco, I think all of those at that position have shown more ability to ad-lib and create than I think Jared Goff is capable of. And I think we kind of got that reminder.
Fumbled 3 times against the Packers, 3 picks against the Bears. The thing we said about Goff last year when they were making a run was he's not playing like he was still with the Rams. And this year, unfortunately, in some of the games, we're saying he's playing like he was still with the Rams. And that's what they were trying to avoid. So it is a little bit shaky right there right now with the turnovers.
I think what becomes interesting after this year is, what is the long-term conversation about Jared Goff with the Detroit Lions? because you're probably not going to be able to hold on to Ben Johnson for another offseason if you're the Lions. And I think that's part of the sense of urgency around this year is, hey, you got him to come back. That was a big deal. You build on all these areas on defense. And if you aren't able to go out there and really push into the postseason and then you lose Ben Johnson, what does this look like? And do we start having more high-level conversations about Jared Goff in that quarterback spot, who, again, has been very good. You mentioned him looking like the version of him with the Rams, could get you to the Super Bowl. But again, in this league where we're so used to quarterbacks now being able to afford you even more, and while this isn't the AFC, and where when healthy you need basically a future Hall of Famer to compete, we're still seeing it's becoming problematic at certain critical junctures. Because, man, if Jordan Love keeps this up, by the way, that dude's starting in the middle of the end of this season, really starting to put it together. And that's a guy who you saw the fun, like all the fun stuff that's easy for us to see. If you don't know a lick about quarterback play watching NFL football, but you see the way that Jordan Love's able to go out there and move around, see the things that he's able to do, it's a lot of the stuff that gets you excited that we see from Justin Fields in spurts, but it's starting to show up a little bit more consistently for Jordan Love in an offense that's sort of growing with him.
Yeah, it is. And because I know for a while there, early on in Green Bay, it was like, do we have to start the search for a quarterback and start over again here for this guy who was waiting in the wings, and now getting his chance. But he is now rounding out into the form that a lot of people thought he would. So if that can, and that's always a big question at the end of the year for every team, are you set at the most important position? And now Green Bay is certainly leaning that way, that they will be going forward with Jordan Love.
Yeah, it's starting to look like, once again, they might have found another dude there. Like the Packers, who would be, are looking for potentially their third straight future Hall of Fame quarterback here. We're not ready to put him in Canton yet, but at the very least, it looks like he's going to get invited back to the party next year. And that was the thing we weren't sure of, because you sat with 3 years of mystery there, and now the mystery being revealed is pretty good. Dad, something, nothing, or everything. The Falcons take back the division lead after Bijan Robinson goes for 2 straight games with over 100 total yards here. Are we buying it? We talked about at the beginning of the season, the Falcons and Saints, 2 of the easiest schedules in football, playing in the NFC South. That's pretty much abject dreck for the most part here. Are we buying anything other than this is a team taking advantage of their easy schedule and they will promptly be shown the door once this gets to meaningful football?
I say any team that comes out of the South, even if looking like Atlanta, then I would say, they're promptly going to be out. They've already run through all the teams in the division once. They're 3-0, so they have that edge. They have the Jets coming up, then Tampa Bay, Carolina, a couple of division games, then Indy and Chicago, and then finish up with New Orleans. So it is not murderer's row by any stretch of the imagination. And it's always like Bijan Robinson, we're head scratching at times, like, are you using him? Are you not using him? What you're doing with this guy? So do they have enough to win the division? Yes. Anything past that, I think, would be maybe asking too much.
Yeah, I would agree. This is nothing to me, especially as we've talked about even having questions about the Detroit Lions' top-end potential. Yeah, the Falcons are in the division lead right now, but that basically feels like a consolation prize here. Happy to see Bijan getting some use again, though. Those were weird times as you've gone back and forth between Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder, who's back in the lineup now, and the weird red zone things, and Arthur Smith trying to answer questions and talk around that. Very strange. Last one here, Dad. Something, nothing, or everything. Justin Tucker missed a field goal under 50 yards this weekend. This feels like everything, and we should start preparing for the apocalypse. That felt like watching your dad get beat up in public, which I said has to be the most jarring thing on earth. Justin Tucker's one of the surest forces of nature that I've ever encountered. And watching that happen made me realize, I don't know if this is a father time thing. I don't know if this is just a bad day thing, but it made me way more sad than any one kicker in the NFL should be able to make me.
First off, I hope you never see me get beat up in public. That would be really rough.
God, please.
Not the fact that you saw that, but the fact that I got beat up, and I wouldn't like that at all. Plus, I'm 60. If I get in a fight in public, you just pull me aside and say, what the hell are you doing? I mean, seriously. What are we, 12 here? So he missed his – he was 20 for 20 in field goals under 50 yards, and he misses, a 40-yarder or whatever it was. He's kicking at 80% this year. That is below the league average, which is something you never say about Justin Tucker. The guy's going to the Hall of Fame and deserves to go to the Hall of Fame, but it is pretty odd this year. That was money. You're used to seeing that. Well, that one's money. Doesn't matter how far it is, it's money. And we've scratched our head a little bit more than we have in the past with him.
If Justin Tucker is truly human and we have to watch him go out like this at the end of his career, I don't know how to properly take that in. I don't know how to properly deal with that. I don't want to, and I won't.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Let's talk about two young studs. And no, I'm not talking about you guys. I'm talking about CJ Stroud and Trevor Lawrence. Jags held off the Stroud Magic in Week 12 to strengthen their AFC South Division lead. Trevor Lawrence threw for 364 yards. Texans missed a late field goal. Jags held on, much to Emerson Latzia's delight. Now, Lawrence and Stroud were both elite. And after the game, Trevor Lawrence had a very tongue-in-cheek answer when asked if he was super excited to be facing Stroud twice a year.
I want the teams in our division to be as bad as possible. So, no, I'm not. That's how I see it. And the way they're playing, it's exciting. Yes, there's going to be I'm sure, some great matchups down the road. And CJ's he's playing lights out. He's doing a great job. I mean, to be a rookie and to play how he is, I got a lot of respect for him. I know how hard it is. I've been in that position.
Guys, are you excited for this rivalry to develop, to see these two go head-to-head over and over? And who, if you think about this, would you actually rather have going forward? Which one of these guys would you like to be on your team?
Wow. Man, it's hard to ignore I understand we're caked in recency bias, but man, we just really have not seen a lot of what CJ Stroud has done. He's got 3,266 pass yards right now, so he passed Justin Herbert for the most in NFL history by a rookie through his first 11 games. So he's coming for every rookie passing record we have. And Dad, we always talk about the rookie wall and all these things that stereotypically come up, and he just keeps kind of bursting through every limitation we normally put on guys in his situation, especially because we're still kind of of coping with the idea that the Houston Texans are now a competently run franchise. So I don't know, Dad. I would probably lean towards C.J. Stroud at this point, which is saying a lot because I think in terms of overall prospect, I mean, as an overall prospect, Trevor Lawrence is probably one of the best, if not the best, in the last 5 years or so in terms of sheer overwhelming physical talent at the position.
Yeah, he definitely is. But I think most people would lean toward Stroud right now. And coming into the league, and we know how hard it is as a rookie quarterback, especially turning the ball over. That you can show all the ability in the world, but a lot of times young quarterbacks turn the ball over. 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's not turning the ball over. To me, that is so key in this because you look at their weapons. You have Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, and Evan Ingram as far as wide receivers, tight end for Jacksonville. Good group, right? Then you have Nico Collins, you have Tank Dell, and you have Dalton Schultz, really the big vet there. That's kind of the three in Houston. And so you kind of Tank Dell, nobody knew who he was, another young kid, right? To come in with C.J. Stroud. So you look at what you're building around your guy, and that adds a lot to it as well. I mean, you got a guy obviously on the rookie deal in C.J. Stroud, but young receivers as well. Not like Nico Collins is a grizzled vet at this point either. So I like what they're building around him, whereas Christian Kirk came in. Everybody wondered, wow, he got a big deal going to Jacksonville. But he has certainly helped live up to that. He has done a nice job. Calvin Ridley coming off the suspension for gambling last year. Then Ingram playing well and having a good year at the tight end position. So you like all their weapons, but their younger weapons in Houston with a younger quarterback. I just, we talk about the arrow pointing up for Jacksonville, which I think it is. But, man, that arrow is really pointing up for how quickly, with a rookie quarterback, with a rookie young head coach, just how well this team is doing.
Where would you put this? Because we've got these two quarterbacks inside the same division, and it looks like they're going to be there for a long time. Like the Jags put even more distance between themselves and the rest of the AFC South in terms of the playoff picture. But when you think about divisional rivalries like this, Dad, and shout out to Trevor Lawrence, by the way, for saying the quiet part loud, because he kind of said it joking and then said all the right stuff. But in your heart of hearts, I think everybody would like that Tom Brady situation. Everyone always says, oh, you got to beat the best, go through the... I don't want to beat the best. I want to beat a bunch of bad teams and get paid and wear rings. Let's go.
Yes. I mean, that part is crazy. Even with players, were you bummed that the best running back in the league wasn't in the game? No. Don't care. If Cooley wasn't, don't care. I mean, so yeah, Trevor Lawrence, what he said, every player is thinking, without question. Can this turn into a rivalry? I mean, certainly it can. Now, you've got the Colts with a young quarterback in Anthony Richardson, who we really didn't get to see a lot of because of injury there, so we have to kind of wait and see on that. And Tennessee is turning it over to a young quarterback right now, and Will Levis. So we'll see what they can kind of restructure into as well. It is a division where right now, well, you would have had as Gardner Minshew, but you basically had 3 rookie quarterbacks going to be running that show, right?
So these two teams split their season series. Houston won the earlier one pretty decisively. Jacksonville avenged it here. And so I guess that's what I mean, because it seems like it could be pretty competitive, because I think of the other quarterbacks that we have inside the same division who are top-notch, right? The best pair overall is probably Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, right? Like you could argue, like Mahomes should lift the AFC West in there. You've got Justin Herbert, who's great, but the Chargers just haven't been competitive enough in that. Really, the entire AFC West hasn't. I guess it's how you want to go, Dad. Like in terms of sheer talent going into a matchup between two quarterbacks, who would it be for the number one pairing inside a division? Would it be Lamar Jackson versus Joe Burrow, or would it be Mahomes versus Herbert? Because it seems like that's got to be the conversation. I don't know if Tua and Josh Allen necessarily touch that one.
Mahomes and Herbert, if you want to just talk about talent or where can they lead their teams, because right now the Chargers have underachieved in that point. Now, Baltimore has gotten to the playoffs and has lost in the playoffs. Last year it was without Lamar Jackson. Yes, they have. Yes, they have. And Cincinnati with Joe Burrow has gotten to the Super Bowl. So I think you do have to go on results. So I would put it more with Lamar and Burrow over Mahomes and Herbert, just because the Chargers haven't really gotten it done in the postseason. But as far as youth, I mean, the oldest again, remember, it's supposed to be Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis, and it will be next year. The oldest quarterback in that league will be, as far as years in the league, is going to be Trevor Lawrence, who got into the league in 2021, right? I mean, 2021.
Yeah.
That's the oldest, that's the most tenured quarterback in that division.
I guess that's the sell for them, too, as far as if you were going to buy like one quarterback divisional rivalry. Because you've also got Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott in the AFC and the NFC East,
NFC,
Dak
yep.
Prescott certainly much longer tenured in that conversation than Jalen Hurts, who is slowly, like, as far as the things we think about, Dad, from a narrative perspective, not saying, and from a football perspective, Jalen Hurts was an MVP candidate last year. He played statistically the far better game of the two quarterbacks in the Super Bowl, and the other one's on track to be the greatest of all time in Patrick Mahomes. Like, Jalen Hurts is working his way with the fourth quarter comebacks, with being clutch, with how his teammates talk about him, into the best quarterback conversation in that tier below Patrick Mahomes in some people's minds. But in that division, too, that matchup with him and Dak is pretty tasty.
I was just going to say, do you go Lamar and Burrow or Dak and Jalen?
I would probably go Lamar and Burrow, just because for Dak Prescott right now, having a great season right now, and certainly going to be in the MVP conversation right now. But when you look at Burrow and Lamar Jackson, I still think there's an extra tier up in that from what we've got with Dak and Jalen right now. Jalen's been great. Like, he stares eye to eye with those guys in a lot of ways, but I would still give the edge to Burrow and Lamar Jackson right now. And I think the conversation would really be between Mahomes, because like talent-wise, Mahomes and Herbert, that's probably like the one you're most excited to see on any given weekend, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of what the teams are going to present in terms of what the quarterbacks can do, would they edge out Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow for you? Because I think right now in my brain they would.
Well, I mean, man, both those offenses, between Lamar running the ball, and he's got receivers this year, and the potential of that Cincinnati offense that we've seen hit their stride, I think I would still probably lean toward them, though it's so difficult to keep Mahomes out of any conversation just because he's Mahomes. Yeah. I mean, it's just, well, what about, Patrick's Patrick, and you just don't know what he's going to pull out of his sleeve.
He did one of the throws again. There was a corner he threw to Travis Kelce that was like over a linebacker and before a safety that was just on a rope. And it's the one that reminds you why you fell in love in the first place. And that was the one that reminded me exactly why we fell in love with Patrick Mahomes. Coming up next, the guy we fell in love with in the college football playoff, Cardell Jones, joins the show.
back to GoJo and Golic. The Michigan-Ohio State rivalry has always had, let's just call it what it is, a level of hatred to it, given the relevancy of the game and, how annual it is. But Jim Harbaugh said Monday that a lot of this tension and animosity seems to be manufactured by outside sources.
A lot of that seems very, very built up from outside of the two programs. I'm not going to go as far as to say contrived, but I mean it is hyped up. I mean hyped up to ends of to no ends. It's very manufactured for the TV show that people want to watch and see.
And now the guys are going to welcome in a guest who can tell us all about it.
Yeah, can tell us about that and more. Former Ohio State quarterback and national champion Cardell Jones joins us now. He's got a new book coming out, The Incredible Untold Story of the College Football Playoff's First Hero, which awesome. First and foremost, Cardell, congratulations on the book. Thank you for joining us, man. How you doing?
Good morning, guys. Appreciate it, and thanks for having me.
First and foremost, I mean, we're coming off the game this weekend. You just heard that from Harbaugh. Manufactured animosity here. What did you make of those comments from him?
I think just like almost any other thing that Harbaugh says, just a little weird to think that the game doesn't live up to the hype when it comes to the two programs. I think it's a lot of dislike. I don't want to use hate because it's such a strong word. It's a dislike on both sides of the ball. And when I think of a lot of outside sources, I think of not just the media, but I think of the fan bases that are so beloved of these programs who haven't stepped foot in these programs, who've never been in these facilities or even went to these universities in some cases that have so much pride, joy, and other emotions built up to this rivalry. And I think that's what adds to the quote-unquote hype of it. But the hype is what it is because over the years and the tradition and the history over these two programs back and forth on the gridiron, and then just the whole, Toledo War back in the day, the war at the border from Ohio and Michigan for Toledo. So I think the history plays into the hype of it, and maybe Harbaugh and, the Michigan program isn't stressing the history of why it got to this as much. But for us at Ohio State, and I guarantee you in those facilities now, is more than just hype.
So there's so much on that game. And a few years back when Harbaugh had lost 2 in a row, there was a thought of, boy, even though he's winning other games, what's his future if he can't beat Ohio State and get to the Big Ten championship game into the playoffs? Now that's reversed. Ryan Day has lost 3 in a row. Did get to the playoffs last year, even though didn't get to the Big Ten championship, but still not winning that game 3 years in a row. In your mind, is there any cause for concern of Ryan Day going forward with this team?
I don't think so at all. But clearly those decisions are made above my pay grade. Yeah. But I don't think so because you look at this guy's track record, you look at his record versus everyone else in the Big Ten, and no one else has beat him, or even for the most part came close. And then you look at his record versus the top 10 opponents and top 25 opponents is over 60, 70%. So you cannot deny what he's have done. And you look at the guys he helped develop to get to the next level. You can't deny his coaching ability, his development, and his strength of his program. This is just one hurdle, and that hurdle happened to be massive that he hasn't yet crossed in his young head coaching career at Ohio State. So I think it'll be a situation just like how Clemson gave Dabo Swinney a lot of time, effort, and energy and leeway when it comes to beating South Carolina. And I think they're on like a 10, 20, whatever game stretch of beating and their rivalry after going 0-5. And Harbaugh the same thing. He didn't catch his first victory over Ohio State until, I think he was 0-4 to 0-5. So it's going to take the university to be clearly understanding with him and still weigh out all the options of everything he's done outside of that game to make a decision like that.
So from the game now to the college football playoff, which is one of the things that lies on the other side of this, the stakes for that game were incredibly high, and now we're looking and getting closer to that final weekend of rankings. And Cardell, for you in the book, again, The Incredible Untold Story of the College Football Playoff's First Hero, this is kind of where your journey started at the end of the season. And I'm curious for you, as you watch now and see Tate Rodemaker at Florida State, who steps in after the injury to Jordan Travis, plays in that last rivalry game against Florida, and is now going into the conference championship championship weekend. Between that and the book, walk us through what he's going through right now as someone who lived that experience during the first year of the college football playoff.
You know, I would imagine with an injury that happened to Jordan Travis, clearly that is devastating. But that Florida State team just looked like a team that just rallies around each other. I had an opportunity to really catch a few of their games this year, especially their first game versus LSU, and just to see how that team rally around each other when things aren't going as planned. I guarantee that's what they're doing with Tate and leading up to last week versus their rivals, Florida, and they're going to continue to develop his confidence and give him more confidence in not just himself, but his playmaking ability and his teammates around him as they get ready for the ACC championship and hopefully the college football playoffs. But going through that mindset, with the mindset I was in was pretty much I didn't want to let my team down. I knew how hard we worked to get to that point. And I knew, honestly, I was just like, if we have a slip up now, clearly I'm the only new piece. It's going to be because of me. I'm going to get blamed. So I was trying to do everything in my power to make sure I was ready for, I think it was Wisconsin who we played in the Big Ten championship game. And then even just dating back a week before going into the Michigan game, we had sayings around our facility and our program of, prepare like a starter. And I really took that to heart about midway through that season of 14. And I think that's what ultimately helped me help our team get some of the success that we had. So I'm pretty sure Tate and Florida State are rallying around those guys. I'm pretty sure at a place like Florida State, he was good enough to go to anywhere in the country. This is not like a typical backup situation where this guy was found off the streets. Like, you see some of the NFL things go on, just bring a guy in, 2 weeks later he's playing. This guy been in every meeting, just like Jordan Travis. This guy's been through spring ball. He's been through camp. He's been through the grind. He's been through the hustle and bustle. Now it's time to put those mental reps to work and hopefully transition to some of the physical performance that they want.
Yeah, when you're the new guy, self-preservation comes into play a little bit, no doubt about that. Hey, only about a minute or so left. I'm wondering your thought of the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. You always played once a year. With the way it's going to go, with divisions being gone and going to 12 teams, you guys could literally play 3 times a year. Regular season, Big Ten championship, and then in the playoffs again. In your mind, does that diminish this rivalry at all?
I personally think it does a little bit because I think it doesn't put much emphasis on the 12th game, which is the game, because they could potentially play in the following week. So I can see scenarios where, if coaches want to quote-unquote rest players for the Big Ten championship game to hopefully win that game the following week versus Michigan or versus Ohio State to get a better seeding in the playoffs. So I think that's all going to be strategized, and I think it does give a little different element to the rivalry that is going to be missing because now it's like, hey, we don't play this game for another 365 days. We're going to play this team. Now, hey, no, we played them in 6 days. and then if it match up again in the college football playoffs, hey, no, we play them in another 6 days, right? So I think it takes away from that a little bit, and I can only imagine one of those teams losing 3 times in 1 year to the other team, what that would do for a head coach or a program moving forward.
I didn't think about that prospect there, but you're right. That is anxiety-inducing right now if they think the hot seat's already hot under Ryan Day or any of these coaches. Cardell, we appreciate the time, man. Everyone, the incredible untold story of the college football playoffs first hero. Cardell, congrats on that. It has to be incredible, and I'm sure it's a lot of great memories that have come out of this process for you.
Sure was. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys, and hopefully you guys have an opportunity to grab the book and share some memories and flashbacks of that 2014 season.
Sounds great.
It was a special year, Dad, and I know I remember well the start of the college football playoff era begins with one of the coolest stories possible. You talk about staying ready for your moment to stay ready and help beat a rival and then go on this run and ultimately end it with a ring on your finger is unbelievable.
Listen, he said it, though. If you're the new guy coming in, you don't want to be the guy screwing up, right? You're going along well, then you're kind of the new addition. You want to keep the train going. You want to keep the machine humming. You don't want to be that guy. So I'd imagine that's a really, really a mental state for you that you got to be in.
They were the lowest ranked team in the first college football playoff poll to ultimately make the CFP. They're the reason we have so many of these hypothetical conversations, all because of that man's right arm. right, time to finish off with this, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us that 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on DraftKingsNetwork.com, Samsung TV Plus, the DraftKings YouTube channel, Roku, all these great places. And tell a friend. We get people asking us all the time where they can see us live. Let them know. Help somebody out. And if you miss any of it, or our great guest, Jordyn Brooks, the linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks that joined us today, or Cardell Jones, who's got a great new book coming out again. Cardell Jones, the incredible untold story of the college football playoffs first hero, talking about the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry, what Florida State can expect with their backup quarterback going into a role the way Cardell did. All of that you can check out wherever you get your podcast, or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. Guys, let's get to this, that, and the third with a very important announcement yesterday. Nicole Arbach, our friend and senior writer over at The Athletic, reported that the Pop-Tarts Bowl will have the first ever edible mascot this year. According to the bowl, when the final whistle blows, the winning team is going to celebrate by taking a bite out of the giant pastry mascot. Now, she reached out to comment and ask if they knew what flavor it was going to be. They cannot disclose that. Dad, I know one thing. This game is December 28th in Orlando. There's a chance that Notre Dame plays in this one. If Notre Dame makes this bowl game, I'm buying a ticket and I'm biting that mascot.
Oh,
I'm looking them dead in the eyes right now and telling you, I'm going to bite your mascot. You cannot stop me. All the security in the world won't save you. I'm biting that mascot.
It brings, to life the term "bite me," right? Because that's what's going to happen.
Yes.
It's going to happen. I'm going to be there with you, and we'll get most of that Pop-Tart. As I answered Nicole's tweet, I said, this now becomes the greatest bowl game of all time. Of all time. When you can eat a Pop-Tart. And I don't care about the flavor. I like them all, but if you're going to ask me, I would go brown sugar.
Oh, got that one right here.
Probably,
brown sugar.
Yep.
I was going to say, Jesse, what you got over there in the holster?
We got frosted brown sugar cinnamon. We got frosted strawberry. And I know you guys are going to love the opportunity to rip me for this. I have never had a Pop-Tart.
Oh, come on.
Eat one of them right now?
No.
Eat one of them. Try it on air.
I got my glucose test, buddy. I can't.
How have you never had a Pop-Tart?
Diabetes? No.
I know. Yeah.
What the hell?
Tomorrow.
Right. Tomorrow then, Jesse. Once you
go
go through this test.
Yes. And hopefully pass.
Mike, you know what it's been. When she was growing up, instead of Pop-Tart, she got served caviar.
No. I had an almond mom. I had an almond mom who would not have allowed this anywhere near my home. Yeah.
What is an almond mom?
It's the mom that's like, maybe, when you're like, Mom, I'm hungry. She's like, maybe you're just thirsty. Or do you want some almonds? Or have you tried chewing your food 100 times? Yeah.
For a kid?
Yeah.
As a kid, she gave you a handful of almonds.
Yeah, I had almonds. Oh, yeah. I mean, she wasn't that crazy, but,
Well, you know what? Wow. Tomorrow, you're about to have a handful of Pop-Tart on this show here. They do the mock-ups of those fake flavors all the time on the internet. I need someone to mock up caviar Pop-Tarts for Jessie so that we can appeal to her finer tastes.
You know what? No. I think that the frosted strawberry sounds just delightful.
So good. Oh, I can't wait till you taste it and just the look on your face.
I hope I like it.
For my money, and by the way, Pop-Tart go on the Pop-Tarts website. They got more flavors than you can imagine. Some of them are really good. I've had like Eggo waffle flavor, which is awesome. If I got to choose the flavor of it, and I think I remember from the press release at the beginning of the year, these guys are going to get their own custom Pop-Tarts for whatever team makes the bowl. Wow. I would want wild berry. I think it's sneaky underrated. And with this, the flavors aren't totally real, so how you package it and the color on the actual Pop-Tart matters a lot. Wild berry renders beautifully and tastes even better.
So if Notre Dame makes that bowl, what flavor should Notre Dame have their Pop-Tart? Like a Lucky Charm marshmallow?
Lucky Charms would go Pop-Tart.
Hard. Yeah, that would be pretty good.
Oh, man.
Wow.
See, in a day and age of collaboration, now, Jesse, you're living in 3023 right now. Baby. I love this.
Oh, yeah.
For a person that has never once tasted a Pop-Tart.
Wow.
Speaking of living in the future, this is not a world I ever thought I'd saw. By the way, we need the collaboration between them and the Duke's Mayo Bowl. That feels like spirit. Fill it with mayonnaise.
Oh, God.
There it is.
No.
Fill it with mayonnaise.
Don't do
Battle
it.
of the bowl games. No. Do something. No. I'll dunk that mascot in mayonnaise, and I will eat it in front of the congregation. It's going to be like that scene in Mother where they eat the baby with a Pop-Tart. Speaking of none of that, let's get to that. I was amazed when I saw this. According to Variety, the show Frenchie Shore France's controversial adaptation of Jersey Shore has been slammed by the Minister of Culture as borderline porno and, quote, the trashiest reality show ever produced in France, which, Jesse, as a person who was a fellow product of the Jersey Shore era with me, that just means they did the show right.
Yeah,
like, that tells me it is spiritually aligned with its counterpart in America.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, you're describing the Jersey Shore, so it's a French adaptation, so it's obviously the same, just in France.
I mean, the bottom line here is you can call it what you want, but how does it rate? If it has great ratings, then so be it, right? That means people are watching, and isn't that what all that matters?
No, yeah. And as we talked about this before the show, but the Japanese translation of the Jersey Shore is the Macaroni Rascals. So I thought that was just important to know.
What?
Yeah, Macaroni Rascals. Yeah.
I need a Macaroni Rascals t-shirt. I need air to breathe.
So bad.
What I'm excited for France is when they get to the point we're at, because France has just entered 2006 right now. I'm very excited for them to do all that. Original Recipe 4 Loco is going to come out soon over there. No one has touched the formulas in their pre-workout supplements, so their foreheads are scratching. And they have not lived yet, because eventually what's going to happen is Frenchie Shore stars are going to make the turn that ours did, because now you see like Pauly D on Fox News all the time. The meme was going around the other day of Pauly D talking about inflation on Fox News. So I'm excited for France in about a decade to watch all of the people from, again, a show that the Minister of Culture called the trashiest reality show and borderline porno to then become their political pundits.
We live in an unserious time, is what it comes down to.
Wasn't on one of those political shows? Wasn't Fabio on it?
Probably.
I mean,
yes.
he was. I mean, this.
And they're like, "What should we
model.
do in Ukraine?" Like, that's what the questions that they're being asked.
Let's go to Fabio for an answer.
Yeah.
Seems odd. Okay.
Sure does.
I mean, in the same breath where we're about to eat a mascot on live television,
True.
It actually feels like we're right where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Speaking of right where we're supposed to be, we're going to do this last story while Jessie also fulfills one of her obligations. She can't eat Pop-Tarts because she has to go and get her glucose tested, which means she's got to drink this weird, like, pregnancy, awful Kool-Aid concoction that basically tastes like sugar water. And so, Jessie, are you going to chug this on air? Is that how this is going to go down?
Yeah, you have to. You have to finish the drink within 5 minutes. So it's 9:55. It's got to be done by 10. So I'll just let you guys talk while I drink this drink.
Do it. Drink it. Drink it.
All right, Jessie's going to hit a chuggy on this. Oh, yeah. There we go. Oh, wow. That does not look like a fun time.
This is like college peer pressure, isn't it? Drink it. Drink it.
Oh, yeah, it is. Chug it, freshman.
Chug it.
While Jessie's, oh wow, she just downed it all in record time.
Oh,
incredible!
my God.
How was that?
Yeah, it's done.
Oh yeah,
that a girl. Yeah,
I did it. Yeah.
Oh man, motherhood is a beautiful process.
Cheers.
She's glowing.
Ooh.
Wow.
The things that you do for the child growing inside of you.
Yeah.
Just look forward to the Pop-Tart tomorrow now.
Oh, man. Yeah, I can't wait. These look delicious. So I'm going to eat one of these tomorrow. Hopefully, when I find out I don't have gestational diabetes.
There you go. Don't eat one now.
We're rooting for Jessie there. Oh,
that is awesome.
As one more note for the third on the way out, there's not much that needs to be said about this other than Sports Illustrated, you should be ashamed of yourself. Futurism reported an article yesterday that Sports Illustrated had published articles by fake AI-generated writers, and that their parent company had actually used AI-generated headshots, created fake writer profiles to post under AI-generated content and make it look real. They have then deleted the content when asked about it. We support the SI Writers Union. That's hot garbage and a bunch of loser behavior. This is an absolute sham to journalism. We talked about journalistic integrity in some ways in the last couple of weeks. This is despicable and ridiculous.
It's another reason to hate AI, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as if we need any more reasons. I mean, this show is clearly against AI, and we were just given another reason to hate them even more.
Join us in our fight against the robots.
Boom.
Yes. You too can chug gestational diabetes Kool-Aid in proof that you are a human being growing another human being inside you. Download, subscribe, rate, review. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.